I knew it. This multi-part series was written by Mario V. Melendez on May 2nd, 2021, about the high incidence of mental illness among liberals, especially liberal women. Here goes. Here's part 1. I knew it. I've always said that you can't be a liberal without there being something wrong with you. Well, guess what? Now a study and a book vindicate me. The study is from last year and the book is from 10 years ago, but I just heard of both today. The study is by Pew Research, a think tank based in Washington, D.C., that likes calling itself a fact tank instead to emphasize its being non-partisan and conducts public opinion polling, demographic research, content analysis, and other data-driven social science research. The book is by Dr. Lyle H. Rossiter, Jr., board, certified in both general and forensic psychiatry, who has diagnosed and treated mental disorders for more than 40 years and has consulted in more than 2,700 civil and criminal cases. I'll discuss the poll by Pew Research in Part 2 and the book by Dr. Rossiter in Part 3. Here's Part 2. I knew it. I've always said that you can't be a liberal without there being something wrong with you, and I was right. Here's the headline from the Pew Research study. Over 50% of liberal white women under 30 have a mental health issue. And here are excerpts from Elizabeth Condra, a writer who did a deep dive into the study. Here goes. The study, which examined white liberals, moderates and conservatives, both male and female, found that conservatives were far less likely to be diagnosed with mental health issues than those who identified as either liberal or even very liberal. What's more, white women suffered the worst of all. White women, ages 18 to 29, who identified as liberal, were given a mental health diagnosis from medical professionals at a rate of 56.3%, as compared to 28.4% in moderates and 27.3% in conservatives. But at the heart of the matter is this. Progressivism is an ideology that supposedly demands equality for all, and one that keeps score to an exhausting degree. The privilege between social classes, between races, between men and women, between religious and non-religious, and more, all have to be constantly monitored, and inequality has to be exposed for the purposes of accountability. That kind of behaviour isn't just unrealistic, it's unsustainable. In all honesty, it's understandable that anxiety and depression thrive in these kinds of environments when we're focusing on every minute, problematic issue in our world and not able to take comprehensive, productive action to solve all these problems. There's also the unrelenting focus on oppression, verbal violence, and microaggressions. We know that building resiliency against hardship is the best weapon against depression and anxiety, yet progressive ideology forces its followers to wallow in feelings of helplessness and victimhood. Instead of empowering women and minorities with self-knowledge, strength of character, and resilience to hardship, progressivism encourages victims to stay in a place of fear and helplessness. End of excerpts. If you want to read more, there's a link in the description box. So, is that extremely high incidence of mental illness among liberals true, irrespective of race, gender, sexual orientation, age, education level, economic status, etc.? I see no reason why not, given Condra's discussion above. Next, the book by Dr. Rossiter on how liberalism leads to mental illness. Here's part 3. I knew it. Again, I've always said that you can't be a liberal without there being something wrong with you, and I was right. Below is from Amazon about the book, The Liberal Mind, The Psychological Causes of Political Madness by Lyle H. Rossiter, Jr., M.D. Here goes. The liberal mind is the first in-depth examination of the major political madness of our time, the radical left's efforts to regulate the people from cradle to grave, To rescue us from our troubled lives, the liberal agenda recommends denial of personal responsibility, encourages self-pity and other pity, fosters government dependency, promotes sexual indulgence, rationalizes violence, excuses financial obligation, justifies theft, ignores rudeness, prescribes complaining and blaming, denigrates marriage and the family, legalizes all abortion, defies religious and social tradition, declares inequality unjust, and rebels against the duties of citizenship. Through multiple entitlements to unearned goods, services, and social status, the liberal politician promises to ensure everyone's material welfare, provide for everyone's healthcare, protect everyone's self-esteem, correct everyone's social and political disadvantage, educate every citizen, and eliminate all class distinctions. Radical liberalism thus assaults the foundations of civilized freedom. Given its irrational goals, coercive methods, and historical failures, and given its perverse effects on character development, there can be no question of the radical agenda's madness. Only an irrational agenda would advocate a systematic destruction of the foundations on which ordered liberty depends. Only an irrational man would want the state to run his life for him, rather than create secure conditions in which he can run his own life. Only an irrational agenda would deliberately undermine the citizen's growth to competence by having the state adopt him. Only irrational thinking would trade individual liberty for government coercion, sacrificing the pride of self-reliance for welfare dependency. Only a madman would look at a community of free people cooperating by choice and see a society of victims exploited by villains. End of excerpt. So, if you thought, like I always do, that there's something seriously wrong with a wokie or a liberal that you know in person or online or politics or entertainment or sports or elsewhere, chances are you're right, and what's wrong is mental illness, plain and simple. Part 4. I knew it. Wokeness or wokeism is the stage 4 terminal phase of this mental illness called liberalism, which is fast becoming a pandemic. It's from a virus that escaped from the faculty lounge of Harvard or something, but I digress. When you start hearing voices telling you he's racist, she's racist, that baby is racist, that statue is racist, that dog is racist, fried chicken is racist, watermelon is racist, walls are racist, math is racist, the Queen is racist, Mom is racist, that finger sign is racist, everything is racist, you're definitely already in that terminal stage. When your loved one reaches that schizophrenic paranoid stage, that's when you know it's time to have him or her or Z, or whatever their preferred pronoun is, institutionalized pronto. Sadly, a lobotomy is highly indicated at that point. I know, that's cruel, but that's the only way to end their misery. I promise you they'll thank you for it later. Desperate times call for desperate measures. You do what you got to do for people you love, especially family. It's called tough love. You can't keep coddling your woke loved ones, hoping they'll snap out of it soon enough. Sorry, Mom, that's wishful thinking. Just so you know, here's a typical woke symptom that made the news lately. If you're not familiar with the racist, quote-unquote, Jeopardy winner and the woke liberal he triggered, click on the link in the description. So, 'cause her words last year are so spot on, let me quote again Elizabeth Condra in part 2 of this series. Here goes. Progressivism is an ideology that supposedly demands equality for all, and one that keeps score to an exhausting degree. The privilege between social classes, between races, between men and women, between religious and non-religious, and more, all have to be constantly monitored, and inequality has to be exposed for the purposes of accountability. That kind of behavior isn't just unrealistic, it's unsustainable. Anxiety and depression thrive in these kinds of environments when we're focusing on every minute, problematic issue in our world. End of quote. So before they bite someone like rabid dogs do, have them institutionalized. ASAP! Part 5. I knew it. Whenever you see a random cop and you have an irrational compulsion to record him because you're hearing voices saying he's a murderer, then you've definitely reached the schizophrenic, paranoid stage 4 of that mental illness called liberalism. In other words, you're already in that dreaded woke phase. That's when your loved ones must make an urgent intervention to have you institutionalized. As I said in Part 2, there's no reason why the extremely high, 56%, incidence of mental illness among liberals who are white women under 30 isn't true of other liberals of every race and age. Now comes this news today about an older black schoolteacher who's clearly mentally ill. She used her cell phone while driving, a driving violation, to record a murderer, a random cop in a patrol car. Hence, the cop, a Latino, pulled her over. Serves her right. You gotta watch the video to believe what happened next. You'd be watching the symptoms of wokeism, the terminal phase of liberalism, a very serious mental disorder. Oh, she's a racist too. Yup, for reasons science still can't explain to this day, you can be woke and a racist at the same time, believe it or not. So, liberalism and multiple personality disorder, MPD, seem to share that symptom. Click on the link in the description. Not knowing it's all on video, she later filed a false police report, a crime, for harassment against the innocent Latino cop. That makes her not only woke, racist and a criminal, she's also a psycho. This nutjob belongs in jail or a mental asylum taking her psychotropic medications, not in a classroom teaching our kids. I hope she's not a mother, because if you're wondering why many cop-black routine encounters end in tragedy, here's the answer. Contempt for cops is the most dangerous thing to learn from one's own mom. That goes for one's own teacher. Speaking of female teachers like her, how about this? I bet there are more of them who are sex offenders who sexually assault their minor male students than cops who murder innocent civilians. Want to bet? So, using her own logic about all cops in general as murderers, how about she gets recorded too because she's a sex offender like all teachers in general? Just saying. That's the end Mario V. Melendez's commentary written on May 2nd, 2021. It's just one of many long-form posts on his Facebook page dedicated mainly to conservatism with a spattering of other subjects, from current events to history to the humanities and more in between.